gosh, guys, it's just a gorgeous day. We're hanging out in Liberty Park in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we're checking out a new one from Magnum. It's brand new. This is called the Ranger, and a lot of their bikes recently, they're kind of upgraded versions of older models. So like that's the MI6. It's a hardtail cross-country mountain bike. They used to have the MI5. Very similar. It just went from like a 350 watt motor to 500 and 36 volt to 48 volt. Whereas this is just totally new. It's something that's really unique in their lineup. It's a large bike. It's really big. It's like 19.75 inches for that simulated seat tube length, and the reach can be pretty great because you've got this tool-free adjustable stem and what I would consider kind of a high-rise handlebar. So when I was riding this on our way over here, it was kind of like a chopper, you know, and that's fun. It's got a really cool look to it. It feels very stable, very comfortable because of these fat tires. And I love that they've gone with punched out rims because that's going to save some weight and also add a little bit of comfort, some flex going on there. These are 20 PSI rated, whereas a lot of other fat tires I see, the off-road ones with the nubs and stuff, they're rated like 5 to 30. So 20, it's definitely a little bit lower, and you can run them even lower than that if you want to. You just have to be careful because if you weigh a lot or if you come into contact with a sharp curb like this, it'd push in and it can kind of create some snake bites, little punctures, compressing the inner tube against the inside of the rim and the tire. So just keep that in mind as you ride around. I love the white wall look. It's kind of a very motorcycle-esque, and the fact that this doesn't have big nubs means it's not going to be buzzing. It's not going to create as much friction. You're still going to have some drag because of the increased contact patch, but it offers a ton of comfort along with this RST guide spring suspension fork. This is pretty beefy. It's got lockout, so if you feel like you're bobbing or diving a lot when you're stopping and you want to eliminate that, you can just, you know, click that forward. You can also adjust preload, so you can preload that spring if you're someone who weighs a little bit more and you just feel like it's too squishy. So there's a lot that you can do with that, even though, you know, it's not an air fork, it's not the super high-end stuff. They're trying to hit a value price point with this at $24.99, and for a fat cruiser that's kind of unique like this, I think that's actually pretty good, especially because it does come with a fairly high capacity 48 volt 13 amp hour pack by default. That's 624 watt hours. That's a lot of juice. You're going to need it because of the extra weight. This bike weighs 74.2 pounds. You know, just about 75 is sort of what I was getting when we measured it earlier. We weighed it from right about here, by the way, with my scale, and it did tip a little bit forward. So the weight distribution, it's not too bad considering this is like an 11-pound motor back here. The battery's at the center of the frame. That's good for stability. The front of this is raked out a little bit, and there's a lot of weight on that tire and on that wheel and the big fork. 135 millimeter hub spacing here versus 100 on a traditional mountain bike or city bike. But they put it out there so you get the travel, and then also so you wouldn't make contact quite as easily with that front fender. Although you can see that if you're pedaling and your foot is forward a little bit, you could still have a little bit of fender strike. And then back here, the way they've got their kickstand set up, it's mounted to the left chainstay, and I've actually kind of hooked my heel on that as I've been pedaling a couple times, so I might like move it backwards a little bit more, or just kind of keep that in mind because it's not mounted to tabs. I'm really thankful that it's not mounted at the center of the frame because you don't get pedal lock, which is where, you know, you're trying to pedal backwards and it collides with the kickstand. So this is decent, but I did clip my heel on that. Maybe a little bit of adjustments worth spending some time to really dial this in and get comfortable with it before you go out riding. It is fairly fast. This is classified as a Class 3 electric bike because it will reach about 25 miles per hour in pedal assist mode. With throttle mode, you can get up to 20, and that's where it's capped off kind of for legal reasons. If you wanted to, you could completely remove the throttle. You can even adjust the top speed with the display, and I'll tell you about how that works a little bit later. But back to frame balance and everything, I just talked about how, you know, the tires and the rims and, you know, it's all really comfortable, and it pairs with this saddle. This is a comfort saddle with rubber bumpers, extra wide, 30.9 millimeter seat post there, which is a little bit wider than some of the other bikes that have like 27.2. So it's like beefy, it's sturdy. And this rear rack back here is going to give you a lot of utility if you want to bring maybe the charger with you or some water or something like that. You'll notice there aren't any bottle cage bosses anywhere on this frame. So for me, that's one of the kind of trade-offs. It's like, okay, I'd probably want to put like a little cup holder or something up there. There's not a whole lot of room on the handlebars, and they're actually pretty narrow, which makes this easier to get through doorways and stuff. But steering is a little, you know, it's a little quicker. You might consider like a bigger cruiser bar if you feel like this is too far forward. You can adjust the stem up and bring it back. You can even bring these bars back, but those ones that sweep back, For some people, that's just going to be a more preferable style. It's going to give you an even more, kind of a slower, more relaxed turn, whereas this is a little bit quicker. So anyway, coming back to the rack, this is rated at 27 kilograms instead of 25, which is standard for most of the other racks I see. So, you know, that's like almost 60 pounds, 59.5 pounds. You could put panniers on the side. There is a little bungee notch, so you could just use a cable over the top. Lots of possibilities, and I like that it comes with lights. You can see that it's got this Spinninga Solo, but it is manually activated. There's a little button on the bottom, and it has 2 AAAs. Same thing with the front. Comes with a light, that's awesome. It's mounted to the arch of the suspension, which means it's going to bounce up and down. Be nice if it was like somewhere up here, but it can get a little bit cluttered. And the fact that there is a mounting provision right here makes it easy to do. And then they save some money by doing another independent light. So this has 3 AAA batteries. This is the Swingo by Spinninga, and it's the same thing. You have to turn it on manually like that. And for me, that's a bit wasteful. You know, you've got these disposable batteries, basically. Maybe get some rechargeables and stuff, but still, you know, you get to your destination, it's a park, everyone's excited to see you, and you just turn your bike off, but maybe you forget to turn off one of the lights. It's gonna wear the battery down all night. So keep that in mind. I love that the bike comes with the lights. I like that even though these aren't reflective sidewalls, they are white, and it's going to help you stand out a little bit more for traffic and just visibility. It's nice to have that good, large, visible footprint, especially with a black frame. It only comes in black. It only comes in this one frame size. And then these fenders, these are steel, which tend to be a little bit sturdier, and you can see how wide they are. They're like 110 millimeters wide, and that's going to give you good coverage side to side. This one doesn't go quite low enough to completely protect your foot and ankles. That's kind of common though, and coming back to not wanting it to rattle too much, they could have gone with like aluminum alloy or plastic, but plastic rattles a lot. Aluminum isn't quite as sturdy and tough. Steel can rust though. Okay, so everything on this bike, all the frame components and stuff, they're all aluminum alloy, but the fenders are steel. So if you get a scratch on that, you might want to use like some nail polish or just something to kind of coat over it, maybe some spray paint. I would call this like a satin black. It's not quite matte. It's got a little bit of a glossy finish, which is nice. It's not going to get fingerprints on it quite so much. Okay, so down here we have a 48 tooth chainring with an alloy guard, and that's nice. It just adds a little bit of toughness if you encounter a curb or a log or something, and it's going to keep the chain from derailing outward. And then we've got this little plastic, it's like a chain cover, so if you have pants on, it's going to keep them from touching the chain and getting greasy. I really appreciate that, and that almost acts like a guide. It protects the chain from dropping off inwards. We've got these 170 millimeter standard length Pro Wheel ounce crank arms, and then these nice large grippy Wellgo platform pedals in black. They look nice. They got reflectors on them. This is a good choice in my opinion. A longer chain. This is a Z chain. You can see it's bouncing up and down a little bit because I'm in one of the higher gears right now. I was going faster on the way to this park, just testing out the top speed. You'll notice that this bike doesn't have a slap guard on it, but apparently the final builds will. You know, I'm reviewing this bike like right when it's coming out, and a lot of times it's like those finishing touches that aren't there in some of the demo bikes that I get to check out. But that's good because with a looser chain, you don't want to start to get little nicks in the paint. And you can see where it's already started to touch in a few places, but it hasn't actually broken through the paint. Again, if it did, you'd have little silver marks, but they're not going to rust because it's aluminum alloy. We do have 2 disconnect points here for the motor, and I love that they've got a steel derailleur guard, which is going to protect that motor power cable as well if the bike tips over. Again, it is a pretty heavy bike, and Magnum works with dealers all across the country, in Canada and New Zealand and Israel. So this company, they've been around for a long time. I've been reviewing their bikes for several years, and they do ship to places where there aren't shops, but I love that they do have a good network of shops, so you can go in and kind of test this out before you commit to it and maybe get some help tuning it up. Given that it is heavy, you might want to make sure you have a bike rack that can support this. Either one that you'd hang from here, like on the back of your car, and it would grab right there, or one where it sits in like a platform, like Kuat has some racks like that, and so does Thule. But I would probably take that battery off. This is like 9.1 pounds just for the battery, and just going to save some weight. And then they do have a battery upgrade option. So those are about $550 to replace or to get an extra. And for a little bit more, I think it's $700 or something, you can get 48 volt 19 amp hour battery pack. So that's really great. High capacity. It's going to add some weight, and it does bulge out a little bit to the left side, but it's not too bad. And for people who just want to have one battery and not worry about taking the other one on a bag or pack or something, you'd use up 10 pounds of weight just with a spare battery. It's a good option. They use lithium ion, Samsung, LG, or Panasonic cells. Good stuff. The bike has a comprehensive year-long warranty. you know, kind of you get what you see here. And I like that their batteries are cross compatible for many of their bikes. So, you know, you could get a couple different ones, maybe a his and hers or a family set, and you could share batteries. And that way you get the bag and you could take the extra battery if you're going on a long haul journey. So coming back down here to the drivetrain and how well it's protected and why that matters for shipping and just durability. The drivetrain actually has Shimano Acera, which are 3 steps up from the base level in the Shimano group set. That's nice. It's a little bit lighter. It's going to last longer, and it's got this barrel adjuster. So over time, there's cable stretch. See, there's the cable right there. As you're using it, the cable just stretches out, and then you can kind of twist this to the left, and it lengthens the housing, which effectively balances out the cable that's stretching. And that way you don't have to take it to a shop and actually have them adjusted, something you can do by hand over time. So this is an 8-speed drivetrain, 11 to 32 teeth. It's looks to be like nickel plated, so it's rust resistant, which is really nice. Great to have an extra gear for hitting and maintaining top speed or just climbing. So having a 32 tooth sprocket, whereas this drivetrain over here, you can see it goes from 14 to 28 teeth, so you don't have that 32, and the larger sprocket in the rear is what helps you climb. Now, it's not such a big deal on this bike, the MI6, because they actually have 3 chain rings up front, so you can switch gears and you can actually climb very well on that bike. But for a bike that's a one-by, which is actually my preference because you don't have an extra derailleur, there's less weight, less clutter, this is nice. This is their upgraded drivetrain. And you can see the shifter up here. It's a half grip twist shifter. It's got a little window so you can see what gear you're in, and these nice padded grips. It's a good cockpit overall. And then this upgraded display panel that's centrally mounted versus left mounted. You can see that back over here. So the displays give you similar readouts and stuff, but this is like the nicer bike. And the final piece before I get into the actual display readouts are these Tektro Ariga E-Comp hydraulic disc brakes, 3-finger levers, adjustable reach, so you can bring them in a little bit if you have small hands. They both have motor inhibitors, whereas kind of the mechanical disc brake setup on that bike and some of the other ones, they only have motor inhibitor on the left-hand side. So this one you have it on both, which is good because that's a much more powerful motor. This is a 750 watt to 1,000 watt motor, whereas that is 500 to 700. So this is a big step up, which is nice given the extra weight and just the big fat tires and maybe doing a little bit of trail riding or something like that. So coming back down here to the discs themselves, we got the rotor in the front, 180 millimeters, rotor in the back, 160. That's an area where it's like, oh, you know, why not have both be 180? It'd give you a little bit of extra stopping power. I'm glad that they put 180 up front because it's bigger, it's going to cool faster, it gives you a mechanical advantage. And you think about stopping, your weight shifts forward, so it's actually more important to have the big disc brake rotor up front. That's how they do it for like downhill mountain bikes and stuff. So they've done it well, but that's probably a cost savings thing, just do a smaller rotor in the back. Or maybe it had to do something with like the space to mount the rack or something. I can't say for sure, but I just wanted to point that out as something that was kind of different. And I talked about the comfort elements before and the seat post. You can get a seat post suspension to smooth things out even more if you wanted, 30.9 millimeter. And if you do, it's going to raise your minimum saddle height by a few inches. And given that this is already a pretty tall, big bike, you know, you probably want to be a pretty tall person, and then keep in mind that the rack is positioned in such a way that the saddle's pretty close to it, and you might start colliding. So in a way, having a seat post suspension might not be too bad because it raises it 3 inches. I couldn't actually get the saddle all the way down in this configuration because it was colliding with the rack. You don't have to have the rear rack, you can take it off, but then you start to lose some of that utility. So there are a few little things on this bike that are like, you know, aesthetically or functionally, that was a trade-off. The disc brake and everything. And then if we come up here to the front, you can see the motor controller box. It's a bit external. It's visually, you know, it stands out a bit. It blends in nicely with the all black paint, although we have gloss here, satin. There's a little bit of a mix and match going on. I don't mind this being separate because it does make those batteries less expensive to replace, and these controllers produce a bit of heat, especially with a higher torque drive system like we've got here and 48 volt system. So if this is heating up but it's separate from those battery cells, that's a good thing because extreme heat and extreme cold is kind of hard on the batteries and can shorten their life cycles. And then up here we do have a USB charging port. All their batteries have this, and I double checked with them. They're like, yeah, it works. I plugged my phone in and it did. it did start to charge, and I have an iPhone, so this must be at least, it's like 5 volt 1 amp. I don't know if it's 2 amp or not, but it did work, and that's great. If you were charging while you're riding, I would try to get like a right angle USB adapter from Amazon or something, or I would just use this off the bike. It's just something that you want to make sure it doesn't get snagged while you're pedaling, and it is nice to have a little battery backup going on. And then there is an on-off sequence here, so you can see the lights are on right now. If you haven't used this bike for a while and you're up here trying to turn it on and you're like, well, why isn't it working? Make sure you tap that and turn on the battery, because it seems like it goes to sleep. So we have done that, getting ready to turn it on. We have a power button up here. The LCD clicks right on very quickly. It is adjustable angle to reduce glare, but it's not completely removable, and there's no USB port up here. So that would have been a nice little extra, considering that there's the high capacity battery option, but it's not uncommon to see this. We have power over here. There's like a little power chart with 6 bars that go up depending on how hard the motor's working. Pedal assist, it's in 1, and the throttle is hot at all times as soon as you turn the bike on, even in pedal assist level 0. Throttle is active. So just be careful, because with a big powerful motor, a lot of times I like to get on the bike, or at least be standing over it, so that if I do bump that, the bike doesn't get out of control and kind of tip over. And there are 6 levels of assist, and I went all the way around to 6 by pressing minus, which is kind of cool. So this menu lets you go from 6 to 0 or 0 to 6. 6 is the highest level of assist. That's what you're going to be in if you want to hit that 25 mile per hour top speed. Over here we have odometer, trip time, trip 1, trip 2, like distance. And we have current speed, which you could switch to kilometers per hour if you wanted. It's in miles per hour right now. And then battery voltage, and a little infographic with 5 ticks. Each tick is like 20% increment, which it's not quite as precise as like a percentage readout or maybe a 10 bar battery infographic, but that's kind of standard in the industry as well. It's just a trade-off. Just be careful out there, because 75-pound bike, it'd be a bummer if you ran out of battery. At least you have a drivetrain that's it's workable. It's going to give you that low gear, and you could kind of limp home, but it might be a workout for sure. Okay, so if we want to, let's pretend we got like a flat tire, or maybe we've got a rack full of gear and we're walking in a park. We can do walk mode. So I just activated that by holding the minus key. The bike's going to go along at 4 or 5 miles per hour, and that's a really convenient thing. There are a lot of places where it's just not right to ride. You can hold the plus button, and it turns on backlighting on the display, but again, it does not activate those lights. They're independent, so think about that. There are a lot of times where I'll hop onto a bike and I'm like, ready to go, and I'm like, oh, I got to turn on the lights, and then I have to get off again, and if I didn't turn the bike off and then I bump the throttle and it takes off, it could be it's a little extra, something to think about. You can hold the plus and minus keys, and it actually brings up a password, and that's where you can go and you can lower the top speed if you're someone who says, I don't want to go, maybe I just want to go 15.5 miles per hour, or maybe it's a family member and you're like, let's keep it safe for them. You can do all that. You can change the units like I talked about before, and that's something that you can work with the dealers or go back to the Magnum website to get some info on. So I'm going to go ahead and hop on this thing and do a little ride test with you. I like that it does have a flick bell built in. I'm going to start off, I guess, in pedal assist level 6. There's a lot of space here. I'm just going to ride around the park. It takes a minute to kick in. And I should mention, that's the cadence sensor down here. It's sealed. It's pretty small. It just feels durable, and it's got 12 magnets inside. So it's a higher resolution sensor, which is great because that means you don't have to pedal as long before it activates. It's not a torque sensor, so it's not about how hard you're pushing. It just measures, are you pedaling at all? A lot of times what I'll do in real life is I'll use the throttle for a second to kind of get the bike going, and that way I don't have to strain my knees, and then I start pedaling when it's a more comfortable cadence. But in this case, I have a camera in my hand, so I'm going to just kind of push forward like this and then start pedaling. Go. Nice and easy around these corners. Maybe off-road it. Yeah, it's a very comfortable bike, and it is fairly stable because of those fat tires, so I can ride with no hands like this, and even at lower speeds it's not feeling out of control. Look at this nice lake. I'm gonna do some climbing here just to demonstrate the power. See, we got that big hill, and I'm just pedaling in a fairly high gear. There we go. We made it. We made it with one hand, and I really was not pushing very hard. So it just gives you a lot of freedom to explore. Okay guys, I wanted to give you the third person perspective. We got Alec here from Magnum, and yeah, he's gonna take the Ranger and just pedal along for a minute so you get a sense for what it looks like. Go for it, dude. Nice, going off-road. Beautiful. Love that suspension. There we go. A little brake test. Thank you so much, man. That was good. How tall are you?
6'3".
6'3", yeah, and you look just about right on this bike. Yeah. So, like we were saying, it's kind of it's one of the bigger bikes in the lineup. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, you are connected to the seat post, and from here you can see that chain. I'm going to do some on-road, some off-road. I'm going to start with the throttle so you can hear the motor, and then I'm going to go into pedal assist so you can see how quickly it responds. And that way you get a sense for that like cadence sensor, and ultimately try to hit that top speed too. So here we go. We got to about 24 there, and actually I was trying to get up to level 6, and I went all the way around. It went down to 0, so I was messing with the controller there a bit before that second stretch of speed. Hope that gives you a sense for what it's like. And now I'm gonna swivel the camera so you can see the other side and get a sense for, you know, I mentioned I was a little bit concerned about kicking that kickstand while I pedal, so let's see how close my foot gets. I think I've actually adjusted where my feet are so I don't kick it. Oh. And I just hit my knee on the rear rack when I was trying to swing it over the top. And that's the thing about a high step bike. It's stiff. The frame is very sturdy because of that top tube, but mounting it's just a little bit tougher. And with a big bike like this, occasionally you bump your knee like that. Yeah, I put my foot where it's the most comfortable, but it's colliding there, so I'd probably try to move that back. I'm not sure what the ramifications would be. This time I'm gonna do some suspension. Nice. Yeah. Just feeling super comfortable. I love these big tires. They're smooth, they're quiet, but they're really plush. Hey guys, we made it back to the shop, and I wanted to show you what the charger looks like. Comes with some tools and stuff. 1.5 pounds, 2 amp, which, you know, it's decent. 6.5 hours to charge the stock battery, but if you got the high capacity battery, it could be taking, like, you know, quite a while to fill that. So that's one area where it's probably just an affordability thing. Now that we're back, you just need to remember to turn off those lights for sure. I love the way the throttles are set up on these Magnum bikes because they override all levels of assist at full power. So you've really got just everything you need with a bike like this. Maybe you've lowered the tire pressure and you're out on the sand, or there's some snow or something. These fat tires can work pretty decently. Again, these ones don't have like the knobby tread, so be careful, but there's just a lot of float, a lot of comfort. We got some good comments on the way here. There was a woman just sitting outside on her patio, and she was like, "Nice bike, what is that?" So it's got that fun appeal. And then one more area to keep your eye on, these tool-free stems are nice because they're highly adjustable. You don't need tools, but you they aren't necessarily quite as like strong all the time. Like over time, I feel like they can get loose a little bit. And then I was noticing on the way over here, I went off a curb and it kind of like, it adjusted a little bit. It moved. And there are teeth in there that over time, if it's not tight, those teeth can kind of get worn down, and then it's going to get even looser. So this bolt right here, I think if you tighten that one, yeah, then it pulls and it creates a tighter clamp. So keep that in mind, especially given that longer reach. And if you're a bigger person, you've got stronger arms, you could be, pulling that out of place. There you go. I'm pretty impressed. A lot of fun on this. Neat to see Magnum branching out and bringing some unique products. For the full written review on the Ranger and all of the other Magnum electric bikes, I'll see you back at electricbikereview.com. Of course, have fun out there, ride safe. I love you guys. Hopefully we'll see you out on the trail enjoying a beautiful day like this, and maybe rescuing a barking dog or something. Have fun. We'll see you next time.